everyone, and welcome to the Debrief on ABC News Live. I'm Kimberly Brooks. Thanks so much for joining us. We have the latest from Paris. The city is moving forward with new plans for the Notre Dame. And we have some record-breaking news from NASA that's literally out of this world. Plus, the only person that can outshine Beyonce is Beyonce. But first, here are your headlines.
A new war of words between the president and Senator Bernie Sanders. It follows a Bernie Sanders town hall on Fox News. The Fox anchor asked a question about government-run health care, and it drew a large response from the audience.
A show of hands of how many people get their insurance from work, private insurance, right now. How many get it from private insurance? Okay, now of those, how many are willing to transition to what the senator says, a government-run system?
President Trump claims his supporters were shut out of the event. He's also slamming Bernie Sanders' tax return, saying the senator, quote, made a fortune from the administration's new tax laws. Sanders responded, saying it appears the president is scared of his campaign. Bald Seattle Seahawks quarterback Russell Wilson is now the NFL's highest paid player. He just agreed to a $140 million contract extension.
The Tampa Bay Lightning, the league's best team in the regular season, has been eliminated from the playoffs, dropping 4 straight games to Columbus in the first round. The Islanders, Jets, and Golden Knights also won last night.
All right, we're starting with this massive manhunt that's underway for an 18-year-old woman accused of threatening Denver schools at the 20th anniversary of the Columbine attacks. So today there's more than a dozen public school districts that are closed, and Clayton Sandell is in Littleton, Colorado with more. Clayton, what do we know about the suspect?
Hey, Kimberly. Well, first, let me show you just the scene here. This would normally be a very bustling Columbine High School behind us. But if you look over there, the parking lot is mostly empty. There are no teachers here. There are no students here. The only cars that are here, if we zoom in, you can take a look, are police cars. And this is the scene that is being repeated at schools across the Denver area. Not just Denver, but we're hearing about schools, districts being closed as far north as Fort Collins, even in the Vail area. And it's all because of this manhunt. What we know about this suspect, she is 18-year-old Sol Pais. She is from South Florida, the Miami area. And let me kind of take you through the timeline of what authorities believe is going on here and how this all unfolded. On Monday, authorities believe that Pais traveled from Miami 1,700 miles here to Denver. As soon as that happened, they say she went and got a ride or was driven, somehow got to a gun store and purchased a pump-action shotgun and some ammunition. Now, at some point on Monday, we believe there are reports that Pais's parents reported her missing, and that started an investigation in the Miami area where reportedly they discovered some online threats that she may have written in a blog post. So that triggered an alert from the Miami FBI to the Denver FBI Tuesday morning. That is when the alert went out to schools, and schools were placed on lockout. Not lockdown, but lockout. So basically that meant that the classes were going on as normal, but people just couldn't come and go. We do not know exactly why Pais has an obsession, authorities say, with Columbine. She's 18. She wasn't even born when Columbine happened. But as we've seen in the past, Columbine has been sort of a benchmark and an inspiration for would-be school shooters and wannabe school shooters. And so this is greatly concerning. Authorities, the FBI, local police consider this a credible threat. They say she was last seen in an area of the foothills to the west here of Denver. So we have seen reports of authorities out there trying to search that areas. So that's kind of where we stand now. Students are out of school, and authorities know they need to find this woman and find her fast.
Yeah, I'm just curious about the students. I don't know if you've talked to any of them, but I wonder how they feel about their school getting so much attention.
Yeah, we've talked to a few students who say that yesterday when they were on lockout that this was sort of annoying. But then when they learned more about the threat and that it was credible, that they are scared. But some of them are more mad than scared. They say our school is not a tourist site. We've also spoken to the former principal here. He's now retired, Frank DeAngelis, here at Columbine. And he has spoken to some of the survivors of that day who say that this is like PTSD. It's stressful. And this is coming on just a few days before the 20th anniversary of Columbine. There is a huge memorial service that is planned for this Saturday, April 20th, which is the anniversary. So right now it's not clear when schools are going to reopen or if that will go forward. Right now it's all very fluid. Kimberly?
All right, Clayton, thank you so much for the updates. And we're moving on to Our Lady, the Notre Dame of Paris. The community is looking forward now with the Prime Minister announcing a competition for the new spire that burned and toppled to the ground during the massive blaze this week. So I want to go to Mikey K in Paris with more. Mikey, can you just tell us the latest on the investigation of how this all happened or how it may have happened?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Kimberly. It's just past 5 p.m. local time here, coming up to nearly 48 hours after the catastrophic blaze took a hold in Cathedral Notre Dame. And the investigation is really taking a number of different aspects. Firstly, there was a Parisian Fire Brigade Service press conference this afternoon. They're still very much looking into the areas of the cathedral where the heat and the fire was the most intensive. They want to make sure that that fire isn't going to break out again. That's really important. They did refuse to answer a question on a faulty sensor. That's something that certainly people are looking into. And then there's also the aspect of the Paris prosecutor. The Paris prosecutor now has interviewed up to 30 people, many of those workers of the 5 construction companies that were involved in the restoration before the fire broke out. And then there's sort of the final bit of inspection, if you like, or the investigation, which is really looking at the external structure of the cathedral, just to see how the mineral composites of the stone that looks okay from the outside, but how actually that has really been affected, because there are all sorts of estimates flying around in terms of the rebuild time, some from 2 years all the way out to 5 years plus.
Yeah, and I just want to talk about all of the money that's being raised to rebuild it, which is very positive. Almost $1 billion being raised, yes?
Yeah, nearly $1 billion, a phenomenal amount. You've got groups like LVMH, L'Oreal, you've got Total Oil, all French companies. Apple have chipped in. The Walt Disney company, which is ABC News's parent company, they've chipped in. So we're looking at really $1 billion here. I actually spoke to Professor Howard Besser, who is an American, a Californian, that is here in Paris at the moment, and he's actually involved in the cultural heritage sector. Take a listen to what he said.
One of the things that I think is absolutely staggering is just 36 hours after this catastrophic fire, there's been nearly $1 billion pledged by companies like LVMH, L'Oreal, Total, even Apple. As people that are involved in the business, is that surprising to you?
It's absolutely astounding. This doesn't happen for other types of disasters or disasters in other types of buildings. I would attribute some of it to this being such an old 500-year-old building and very much a symbol of Paris, in the very center of Paris.
Obviously the religious component is important as well.
Yes. And with a religious building, you will see greater numbers of contributions and larger contributions than with a non-religious building. With a non-religious building, everyone expects the government to pitch in and carry the weight with small amount of crowdfunding on top of that. But with religion, it gets people really going.
Yeah, you know as well, Kimberly, it's really important to remember here that whilst these huge organisations, these huge groups are pitching in millions and millions of dollars, it's also important to recognise the thousands of contributions and donations that have come from local people, up to $100,000, in excess of 10,000 people through GoFundMe campaigns. So it's really important to just sort of recognise how significant the contributions are from broad sections of society as well. Kimberly, back to you.
Thank you so much, Mikey. Yes, an incredible amount of money, and also just a very important mention while we're speaking of churches. $750,000 has been raised for the 3 black church fires in Louisiana. So very good. And on to Washington. President Trump, he issued his second veto of his presidency, stopping a resolution that would have ended U.S. involvement in the Yemen war. So I want to go to Mona Kosar-Abdi at the White House. Mona, what's the president saying about his decision here?
Well, Kimberly, in a letter to the Senate, the president called the resolution not only unnecessary, but he said it was a dangerous attempt to undermine his constitutional authorities. This historic resolution would have ended U.S. support to the Saudi-led war in Yemen. This war has been going on for years, and it's really turned into a humanitarian crisis. Now, this was a bipartisan measure. It brought together not just Democrats and Republicans, but also key Trump allies who saw this resolution in line with his doctrine of ending U.S. involvement in foreign wars. But it's important to note that this resolution was also a message to the president, a rebuke of the president for continuing to support Saudi Arabia despite the killing of U.S.-based journalist Jamal Khashoggi. So the president, it looks like, at the end of the day, looked at both the message that Congress was sending and also the perceived threat to his executive powers and decided to issue his second veto of his presidency.
Yeah, very interesting that this is happening now. And while we have you, I want to talk about the Mueller report that's coming out tomorrow. How is the White House preparing their response?
Right. So this has been obviously 2 years of speculation, and we're finally getting to see the Mueller report for the first time. It will be the first time the White House, Congress, and the American people have seen this report because, Kimberly, of course, since the report was submitted to the DOJ, we've only seen the Attorney General's 4-page summary of this. And so the president's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, says that they are drafting a sort of counter report to this. He says it's going to be dozens of pages long, and it will possibly be a rebuttal to any damaging information that might come out of this report. But again, the sources closest to the president's legal team also tell ABC News that they're kind of in a wait-and-see mode right now. They're holding off, and perhaps if it doesn't warrant a response, then they won't issue a response because, again, the president has been saying that the Attorney General summary vindicated him. He was saying just this morning, no collusion, no obstruction. So he's held its stance since the beginning of this investigation.
All right, Mona, thank you so much. I think we're all in wait-and-see mode. Okay, so we're moving on to some breaking news that's literally out of this world. NASA astronaut Christina Koch, she left for space on March 14th, and she made news when she took that spacewalk. But now she will stay until February of 2020, setting another record of the longest stay. So I want to go to David Curley, who's in our D.C. bureau, with more.
So Christina Koch is a rookie astronaut. She just arrived at the station a month ago, but NASA's just told her, you're not going to come home in the fall. You're actually going to stay until February of 2020. NASA says this is part of their effort to research long-duration flight. So Christina gets to stay a whole lot longer than she expected. And I got to tell you, when we talked to her, she seemed very excited about that prospect of staying in the station and potentially setting a record for the longest stay for an American woman.
She just got to space a month ago, and this morning, 40-year-old Christina Koch has been told she'll be staying much longer than expected, until next year. She could set the record for a woman in space, 328 days. We talked to her exclusively.
I still have the grin on my face that won't seem to go away, just that I'm here every day.
Koch is a rookie, a scientist who has spent months researching at the Earth's poles. Floating into the space station for the first time, she was greeted by her astronaut classmate, Anne McClain. She says it was a bit surreal.
To walk into the actual reality of the space station, like the fact that it actually exists, it was like walking into a movie set.
It was another record Koch was expected to set, the first all-female spacewalk with McClain. But that didn't work out. She has been on a spacewalk with fellow astronaut Nick Hague and now prepares for her very long stay.
If I am fortunate enough to do that, and if that's something that inspires people on the ground, then of course that's something that is also my honor to be a part of.
So Koch is expected to set the record for an American woman, and if her return is delayed by just a couple of weeks, she could beat Scott Kelly's single flight mark. NASA says it's extending her mission as part of its study of long-duration spaceflight. David Curley, ABC News, Washington.
All right, thank you, David, so much. And now we're moving on to a story that reminds us we have to be so careful when we're using these ride-sharing apps. Let's not forget the South Carolina student who got into the wrong car and ended up dead. And now there's new surveillance footage of a woman who in Maryland who was robbed after getting into a car she thought was her Uber. So I'm joined by Zachary Keach with this story. Zachary, I just want you to tell me exactly what happened.
Yeah, so, well, first of all, you mentioned Samantha Josephson in South Carolina, the 21-year-old college senior there at the University of South Carolina that was killed. I think that has a lot of people on edge. This happened just one day after that, and this happened in Washington, D.C. So a woman goes out with some of her friends. It's early in the morning on March 30th, about 3 a.m., 4 a.m. in the morning. She needs a ride home. She goes to an app like we've all done so many times. We pick up the phone. We, place a pickup, right, and a drop off. And she steps outside and there's a vehicle there and she thinks that's her car, right? Come to find out she didn't actually request the car that she thought she requested. In any case, she gets into the car. The gentleman asks her if she needs a ride. She says yes. The guy takes her to her apartment. He asks to be paid. At that point in time, she realizes that there's something wrong and says that she's already paid.
Did he know her address?
She gave it to him.
Okay.
She gave it to him. So in hindsight, she's replaying these things and understanding that certainly there were some red flags that she should have identified. Takes her to her apartment, wants to be paid. She refuses. He follows her inside. Wow. Gets on the elevator with her, tries to take her purse. She fights him off, but he continues to be persistent and actually follows her into her apartment, her actual home, where he steals a couple things and gets away. All things considered, obviously, we're glad that she's safe. Her family, detectives, everybody's glad that things didn't end up much worse, but certainly a scary situation, a reminder for all of us about just how vulnerable we are when we use these services.
I've done this before.
You were saying that?
Yeah, I've done this before. A car has pulled up and I've actually gotten into the car thinking it was my Uber. So I guess I'm asking you, what are the things that people should be doing?
Well, I think that the big things are, first of all, make sure that you're ordering the car, right? Like make sure that you're placing the order and that you're looking at the information that comes across the screen. You'll have a make and a model there. You'll have a license plate number. And typically you'll have a description of the driver. And I think that those are key pieces of information. As you know, here in New York City, there are so many cars that just based off of function, usually we're forced to identify some of those things, right? The last three of the license plate is usually a pretty good indicator, but those are the really, key things that we need to be thinking about.
And I just want to say this before we wrap up. I mean, there's also this idea that these situations could happen even if you got into the right Uber.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we are putting our trust into people that we don't know.
Yes.
And clearly people are trying to exploit that and take advantage of that. So I think that one of the things that Samantha Josephson's family has really tried to push is, especially for young women, for women who are out late at night, to move as a group, not to be doing it by yourself.
Absolutely. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
we got to stay safe. Yes.
Thank you.
So guys, there are new developments in the measles outbreak. A new Washington Post report says health officials have now identified patient 0 who traveled from New York to Michigan and didn't know he was infected. So I want to go to Dr. Jen Ashton. She's on FaceTime in New York. Dr. Jen, who is patient 0 and what do we know from this report about how it was spread?
Well, this is the good work of the disease detectives, that's what I call them at the CDC, who have been literally working on this since the measles outbreak started. What we know about this individual, his identity, of course, has not been released, really, nor should it, is that he traveled to the United States from Israel, arrived in Brooklyn, New York. This was apparently a charity fundraising trip, and then traveled to Detroit, Michigan. And at this point is thought or confirmed to have infected 39 other people. So this was very critical in figuring out exactly how this outbreak started, because, they're watching outbreaks in all parts of the world for a variety of infectious diseases. And At this point, there are 555 confirmed cases of measles in 20 states. We will expect that number to go up because we have to remind people, most people have never heard of the measles. Most doctors have never seen a case of the measles because it was largely eradicated due to the success of the safe and effective measles vaccine. But this is the single most contagious virus in the world. And 90% of people who are not vaccinated, therefore not immune to the measles, will become infected if exposed to this virus. So that number, 555 cases, absolutely is expected to go up.
Wow, that's incredible, because you always imagine in my mind that people were vaccinated when they were children. So you don't even imagine people contracting this at all. But I want to move on to other health news. There's lots of discussion about mental health now. We have all of these celebrities coming out. Bebe Rexha talking about bipolar disorder, Justin Bieber and depression, Wendy Williams, Prince Harry collaborating with Oprah on mental wellness. What is it about this conversation that's making it more acceptable now? We need to be talking about this, and now we finally are.
Well, let's start with the numbers. First of all, 1 in 5 American adults will suffer from a mental illness at some point in their lives. So this is to say it's common, that's an understatement. I think that the awareness is something that, you know, celebrities really, they pack a punch with these things because they have this kind of image of being larger than life, having these perfect lives. And when they come forward and say, I have this, I have that, it goes a long way to destigmatizing something that I always say we should think of this no differently as heart disease, diabetes, cancer, high blood pressure.
Absolutely.
If you have mental illness, address it, acknowledge it, and get help and get treatment.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people think of mental wellness as having a mental illness, but it's like you would go to the doctor for a cold, you would go to the doctor for cancer. There's a spectrum, right?
Absolutely, 100%. And again, we just have to take something that we can't see oftentimes and something above the neck as seriously as we do for something we can see or something that may happen below the neck. And in medicine, you know, I'm here in my medical office today, as you can see. You know, I ask every single patient about their mental well-being because this is not only a potential threat to their life, it's common, and a lot of people are suffering, and they just want to be asked about it.
Yes, Dr. Jen Ashton, thank you so much for keeping the conversation going. We appreciate that.
Thanks.
So we're moving on. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex are breaking tradition when it comes to their new baby. They want this little thing called privacy. Imagine. Well, apparently the British media is not feeling this change at all. So I want to go to Julia McFarlane in London. Julia, let's talk about this. Why are the tabloids so upset at a normal couple, not a normal couple, but a couple wanting privacy?
Exactly, Kimberly. I think what this is showing is that there really has been quite a deterioration in the relationship between some of the British tabloids and Harry and Meghan. They announced a few days ago that their plans for welcoming the birth of their new child, they were going to celebrate together privately as a family, and that they would then look forward to sharing photos of the newborn and of the new family in their own time. Now, this caused a bit of a stink with the tabloids. Don't forget, they make huge amount of money, massive increase in their circulation with content about Harry and Meghan because of the overwhelming public interest into them. And the idea that they're not going to be able to capitalize on the new birth immediately has really put quite a lot of noses out of joint, but some really quite excoriating words coming out of some of the tabloids. I just want to bring you a couple of lines. The Sun, which is a daily tabloid. It's the biggest newspaper in circulation in the whole UK. Biggest newspaper as well as the biggest tabloid. A line from their leader says that the couple were infringing on the public's royal rights by this privacy that they're hoping for their family. It goes on to say, the public has a right to know about the lives of those largely funded by their taxes. You can accept that or be private citizens, not both. what I think is interesting is that there is a little bit of a tension in the role that Harry and Meghan are going to play. Don't forget that Harry is well at the back of the pecking order in terms of the line of succession. He comes up right after Will and Kate's children. Their child is not going to be an HRH. So any claims that, of course, there's claims that the public have a right to see the new baby, but it's not quite the same as seeing the next king as it was when Prince George was born. So there's shades of grey in this, but the tabloids are certainly not happy about their plans.
And super fast, before we go, I just have to ask you, what can we expect to see?
Well, there was a lot of speculation that the couple might have their birth in the Lindo wing, which has a lot of association with royal births, but it seems now that that's not likely to be the case. And we don't actually know where it's going to happen. We don't know if Meghan will have a home birth, whether she'll have the birth in another NHS hospital or a private hospital. But I think what we can expect is that the palace will announce that the Duchess has gone into labour, news updates on the health of the mother and the child, and then in the days to come, I think, in their own time, once Meghan's rested and recovered, that we'll see some beautiful photos of the new family, which we'll all be really excited about, but it will be in their own timetable, and I don't think we'll see anything immediately after the birth, the way that we did with Will and Kate.
All right, Julia McFarland, thank you so much. I appreciate that. In their own time, very important. So, all right, guys, only one person can outshine Beyonce, like I said, and that is Beyoncé. How is this woman making Coachella history again? And she's not even at Coachella, she's Beyoncé. So the Netflix documentary of her iconic performance is out today, and it is pure Black excellence. So I know some of you stayed up or woke up at 3 a.m. Eastern time to watch it first. Some of you called your best friend to get your Netflix password, but it was worth it. I know it and you know it because you said so on Twitter. So let's look at a few of the reactions that people had. You see this, it says, my honest reaction to every single part of this film. That was me literally a couple hours ago. That's awesome. That's all of us. And then you have this, this is amazing. It says, I'm a simple man. Beyonce drops anything, I buy it. Sis could have a whole album of just breathing and I would still buy it with a quickness, period. And that is also me. And here we have someone on Twitter saying, I want to do that again. It feels good. World, prepare for the coming force that is Blue Ivy Carter. Yes, she made her debut. The twins made the debut. We heard some new songs in there, and a live album was dropped alongside it. Beyonce, we love you. We love you so much. All right, guys, continue to take care of yourselves through all of this news. And if you're around, you can stick around for the briefing room at 3:30 p.m. Then we're going to have World News Prime at 8 p.m. And if you want to stay updated on all of these headlines, you can go to abcnews.com or download the app. I'm Kimberly Brooks. Have a good day, and I'll see you tomorrow.